If you drink your first cup of coffee within minutes of getting out of bed, before you have eaten a single thing, while the house is still quiet and the morning is just getting started, your blood sugar is already spiking before you have touched your breakfast. Not because of what you ate, because of when you drank. That one habit, something millions of people do every single morning without a second thought, can push your fasting glucose up by nearly 30 points before your day has even begun. And once you understand why that happens and what to do instead, the fix is surprisingly simple. Here is what most people over 60 have never been told directly. After age 60, your body's ability to manage blood sugar changes in two very specific ways. First, muscle mass gradually decreases, and muscle is one of the primary tissues that pulls glucose out of your bloodstream. Less muscle means fewer places for that sugar to go after a meal. Second, the beta cells in your pancreas, the cells that produce insulin, become slower to respond. When your pancreas is slow, glucose lingers in your blood longer than it should. The American Diabetes Association reports that adults over 65 are the fastest growing group receiving new diabetes diagnoses. 1 in 4 Americans over 65 has some form of diabetes. An estimated half of all seniors have prediabetes, blood sugar that has not yet crossed the clinical line but is clearly heading there, and most of them have no idea because the early symptoms are easy to dismiss. A little more fatigue, some brain fog after lunch, more thirst than usual. Now here is where coffee enters the story in a way that might surprise you. Coffee contains 2 compounds that interact directly with those age-related changes. The first is chlorogenic acid. Think of it as a traffic controller for glucose. When you eat carbohydrates, bread, rice, fruit, anything starchy, they break down into glucose and flood your small intestine to be absorbed into the blood. This normally happens fast, which is what causes sharp post-meal spikes. Chlorogenic acid slows that process down by inhibiting an enzyme called alpha-glucosidase, which is responsible for breaking complex carbs into simple sugars. Slow the enzyme, slow the flood. Your blood sugar rises more gradually, which is much easier for an aging pancreas to handle. A review that analyzed 28 separate clinical studies found that chlorogenic acid from coffee consistently reduced post-meal glucose spikes and improved insulin sensitivity, particularly in adults with prediabetes or impaired glucose regulation. That means the people who needed it most saw the greatest benefit. The second compound is trigonelline. This one gets far less attention, but it is equally important. Trigonelline has been shown to activate receptors in your liver that help clear glucose from the blood more efficiently. Your liver can either release stored glucose into the bloodstream or absorb excess glucose and store it safely. Trigonelline nudges the liver toward the second option. A 2022 study published in the European Journal of Nutrition found that trigonelline significantly improved fasting glucose levels in adults with metabolic syndrome, a condition extremely common in people over 60. And here is something that surprises almost everyone. Decaffeinated coffee contains just as much chlorogenic acid and trigonelline as regular coffee. The blood sugar benefits of coffee have almost nothing to do with caffeine. They come from these other compounds entirely. So if your doctor has asked you to cut back on caffeine, you do not have to give up the metabolic benefit. A good quality decaf delivers it just the same. But, and this matters, all of those benefits disappear if you are drinking your coffee the wrong way. There are 3 specific habits that cancel out everything coffee could be doing for you. I want to go through each one honestly, because when I describe them, a lot of people recognize themselves immediately. The first is drinking coffee the moment you wake up, before eating anything. This is probably the most common morning habit in America, and it is the one doing the most damage. Here is the biology. From roughly 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. Well, your body goes through something called the dawn phenomenon. Your adrenal glands release cortisol, your natural wake-up hormone, which signals your liver to release stored glucose into the bloodstream to give you energy for the day ahead. This happens every morning whether you eat or not. Your blood sugar is already naturally elevated in those early hours. Now, caffeine stimulates those same adrenal glands and amplifies the cortisol response, telling your liver to release even more glucose on top of what it has already released. A study published in the British Journal of Nutrition tracked continuous glucose monitors in healthy adults and found that caffeinated coffee first thing in the morning and before eating raised blood glucose by an average of 29 milligrams per deciliter compared to mornings when coffee was skipped. In people with insulin resistance, the spike was even higher. You have not eaten a thing. Your glucose is already elevated from the dawn phenomenon. Then caffeine pours fuel on that fire. This is why so many people over 60 are puzzled when their fasting glucose is high in the morning, despite eating carefully the night before. It is not last night's dinner causing that number. It is this morning's coffee, drunk on an empty stomach at the wrong time. The second mistake is adding sugar, flavored creamer, or sweeteners to your cup. 1 teaspoon of sugar is about 4 grams of pure glucose with no fiber, no fat, and no protein to slow it down. In a warm liquid, it absorbs almost immediately. The cruel irony is that you are drinking coffee specifically because chlorogenic acid slows glucose absorption, and then you are dissolving straight glucose into the same cup. Chlorogenic acid slows the digestion of complex carbohydrates. It does not neutralize sugar you have added directly. A major analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition examined coffee consumption in over 200,000 adults and found that plain coffee was significantly associated with lower diabetes risk. But this protective effect was substantially diminished when sugar was added. Sweetened coffee, the study concluded, was metabolically closer to a sugary drink than to plain coffee. What about artificial sweeteners? The research here is still developing, but a 2022 study published in Cell found that short-term use of sucralose and saccharin caused measurable disruptions in the gut microbiome and impaired glucose responses in some participants. The gut microbiome plays a direct role in how your body handles blood sugar. If you genuinely cannot drink it plain, a small amount of pure stevia is currently the one sweetener that shows a neutral to slightly beneficial effect on gut bacteria and glucose metabolism. The third mistake is the late afternoon or evening cup. Many people over 60 feel that coffee no longer affects their sleep. They fall asleep just fine. But here is what is actually happening. Caffeine's half-life in the body is between 5 and 7 hours in younger adults. After 65, liver enzymes that metabolize caffeine become less efficient. The half-life for many older adults stretches to 8 or even 9 hours. At 3 p.m., coffee means meaningful caffeine is still circulating in your brain at midnight, even if you do not feel it. And the reason this matters for blood sugar specifically is that the most critical time for glucose regulation is during deep, slow-wave sleep. This is when your body replenishes insulin sensitivity, repairs insulin receptors on your cells, and resets your metabolic hormones for the next day. Research published in Diabetes Care found that even a single night of poor sleep reduced insulin sensitivity the following day by up to 25%. Poor sleep raises cortisol, which raises glucose. It increases cravings for high-carb foods the next morning. It reduces energy and motivation to move. Poor sleep and blood sugar dysregulation feed each other in a cycle that is hard to break. And for many seniors, a late afternoon coffee habit is quietly keeping that cycle going. I want to tell you about a patient I will call Raymond. He was 74, a retired engineer, and genuinely baffled by his blood sugar numbers. He walked every morning, had cut back on bread, was proud of his 3-cup-a-day coffee habit, and felt he was doing everything right. His fasting glucose was stuck at 142, and his A1C had climbed to 7.3%. When I went through his day with him hour by hour, every one of those 3 mistakes was present. Coffee the moment his alarm went off. 1 heaping teaspoon of sugar in each cup. A 3rd cup most evenings around 7 p.m. When we changed just those 3 things, nothing else, his fasting glucose dropped from 142 to 118 within 8 weeks. His A1C came down from 7.3 to 6.8%. His doctor described the improvement as remarkable, and not a single medication was adjusted. Now let me tell you what we actually changed, because that is the part that matters to you. There are 3 specific windows where coffee has been shown to work most powerfully for blood sugar control in older adults. The first is the delayed morning cup, 45 to 90 minutes after waking. When your alarm goes off, drink a full glass of water first. Let your cortisol peak naturally and begin its gradual decline, which happens in the first 30 to 60 minutes of being awake. Then eat a small amount of protein before your coffee. A soft-boiled egg, plain Greek yogurt, a small handful of unsalted nuts, or a piece of cheese. It does not need to be a full breakfast. Just protein. Here is why this works. Protein stimulates the release of GLP-1, a hormone that enhances insulin's effectiveness and slows how quickly food moves through your digestive system. It also blunts the cortisol response to caffeine, reducing the liver's glucose dump. And protein on its own has almost no impact on blood sugar. After your protein, then have your plain black coffee. One addition worth considering, a 1/4 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon stirred into your cup. Ceylon cinnamon, not the common cassia variety, contains compounds that partially mimic insulin activity. A published meta-analysis found that daily cinnamon supplementation reduced fasting blood glucose by an average of 10 milligrams per deciliter in people with type 2 diabetes. It costs almost nothing, and the research behind it is solid. The second window is 20 to 30 minutes before your largest meal, usually lunch. This is the window most people have never heard of, and it is one of the most underused strategies for controlling post-meal glucose. Drink a small cup of plain black coffee in that window before you sit down to eat. During those 20 minutes, the chlorogenic acid and trigonelline are being absorbed into your intestinal lining. The enzyme that breaks down carbohydrates is being partially slowed. Your liver is being primed to manage incoming glucose more efficiently. Then when your food arrives, it enters an already prepared metabolic environment. A clinical study found that consuming coffee 30 minutes before a high-carbohydrate meal significantly reduced the 2-hour post-meal glucose spike compared to drinking coffee with the meal or after it. The timing is what creates the effect. Coffee during the meal does not produce the same result. The third window is immediately after physical activity. If you walk, swim, do light resistance work, anything that gets you moving, your muscle cells open up glucose transporters called GLUT4 after exercise. These are essentially doorways in the cell membrane that allow glucose to enter without requiring insulin. It is one of the most powerful natural mechanisms for clearing blood sugar that exists. Research from the University of Bath found that drinking a moderate amount of caffeinated coffee within 30 minutes of finishing exercise enhanced this GLUT4 activity and extended the muscle's glucose-absorbing window by an additional 30 to 45 minutes. So if you walk in the morning or afternoon, have your post-exercise coffee plain within half an hour of finishing. Your muscles will use the caffeine to absorb glucose more efficiently with or without insulin involvement. This combination of movement followed by coffee is genuinely one of the most blood sugar-friendly habits I know, and it requires no special equipment, no supplements, and no extra expense. Raymond's story had a good ending, but I want to be clear about something before we close. Everything shared here is grounded in published clinical research, but everyone's body is different. If you are currently taking diabetes medication, metformin, insulin, a GLP-1 medication, or anything else, please do not adjust your dose or stop taking anything based on this. Bring what you have learned here to your doctor and use it as the starting point for a conversation. If you experience heart palpitations or disrupted sleep from coffee, you may metabolize caffeine slowly due to a genetic variation. In that case, cap yourself at 1 cup of regular coffee per day or switch to a high-quality decaf, which delivers the full chlorogenic acid and trigonelline benefit. If you have acid reflux or a sensitive stomach, drink your coffee with your meal rather than before it. The protective effect is reduced slightly, but still present. The single most important thing to take from everything covered here is this: your coffee habit is not the problem. The timing, the additions, and the after-dark cup are the problem. Fix those 3 things, and the cup you already drink every morning starts working with your biology instead of against it. Raymond went from confused and frustrated to clear-eyed about what had been holding his numbers back, and once he understood it, the changes were easy to make and easy to maintain. Tonight, before you go to sleep, set your coffee maker to brew, but do not pour that first cup the moment you wake up. Drink your water, have a small protein source, and then enjoy your coffee. Plain, calm, and timed right. That is where it starts. If you have a spouse, a parent, a sibling, or a close friend who has been told their blood sugar is heading in the wrong direction, please share this with them. A lot of people are living with this problem and have never been told something this specific or this practical. And if this kind of honest, grounded health information is useful to you, consider subscribing. I share straightforward medical guidance every week, and I would genuinely love to keep helping you. Before you go, I want to ask you something. Do you currently drink your morning coffee before eating, after eating, or somewhere in between? And after hearing all of this, is there one change you are going to try first? Tell me in the comments. Your answer might be exactly what someone else reading this needed to hear today.